Activist Show, and I'm your weaver of context, Caroline Casey. So we're on a waxing full moon, There will be a full moon very early on Sunday morning at 9 plus Sagittarius, 9 plus Gemini. The image for the moon will be goddess of opportunity in a theatrical play, spiraling gracefully into the air. Opportunity awaits, following through on our inner dreams, optimistic recharge after some down and outs. Oh, we need that irrepressibility, glitziness, and the sun in Gemini is like full on. So waxing full moon. It's the waxing full moon Sagittarius of myriad guiding stories translated into accessible vernacular. You know, all the stories that ever were or will be are here now, to be spiraled forth into the Memosphere. I made that up, but it's the collective group mind. The more we know of culture, stories, history, the more effective we be in our alchemical task of composting the grotesque, monstrous animation of America's shadow that we see around us into nutrient for global democratic animism. We can do this. So we're interweaving the astro-animist-mytho political guiding meta-narrative with guiding clips from Carl Jung, Pope Leo, Mathew Remsky on the Pope, Iranian Lego News Service on the rich beauty of Persian culture, Omid Safi, my Moroccan guide on West African Sufism to America. It was recorded at the shrine of Ahmad al-Tijani in Fez, Morocco. We'll hear a lot about him. And always Scheherazade and Dunyazade, right? The liberating sisters presiding over Alf Layla, wa-Layla, the 1001 Nights, that the right stories told at the right time will redeem the world. There we go. So, yeah. So what we're about. Well, we'll start with Carl Jung. I think he's lined up. So Carl Jung, here. Welcome, Carl Jung. Here we go.
Now, here is where everyone gets it wrong. The shadow is not your enemy. It is not the evil within you that must be conquered and destroyed. It is unlived life. It is energy, raw, unprocessed, unintegrated energy that has nowhere to go because you told it long ago that it was not welcome. The aggression you buried. It may be the courage you cannot find, the hunger for recognition you were ashamed of. It might be the engine of everything you were meant to build, the parts of yourself you call too much, too loud, too wanting, too dark. Those are where the power is. There is gold in the shadow, not in spite of the darkness, inside it.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Carl. So remember Peter Kingsley in his recording Path that I came across in the desert in Morocco at a time of need, saying Western culture originally had a sacred purpose, and logic and rationality were intended as steps to the transcendent. I'm like, no. And he said, the sacred purpose of Western culture was forgotten in the West, but kept alive in Berber mystical poetry and the Islamic Sufi traditions of mysticism. But Carl Jung was into all, was diving into all, with deep delving curiosity into the alchemical traditions of the West. So no one story is complete, right? So we go, thank you, Carl, for filling in and dancing with Peter Kingsley and all. So interesting about the shadow. So our chart now, just our guiding astro-mytho thing, is the sun is at 7 Gemini, whose image is, aroused strikers surround a factory. And the midheaven, the point overhead, is a labor demonstration. So those are the only two in 360 symbols that are like, oh, woof. So it's even the word activism, even though this is the Visionary Activist Show, I keep wanting to replace it with participant. Are you an activist? No, I'm a participant. Participatory. So it's the weaving again of East and West, of Middle East and West, and the best of all traditions, because we need everything. And the sun in Gemini, right next to Uranus, liberating trickster, principle of ingenuity and genius, and it says to all of us, where would you like genius? What do you want to be a messenger for? And where would you like, the path to open for that? Move. And it's right next to Ceres Demeter at the last degree of Taurus, messengers on behalf of the earth. And the sun trines Pluto, stationing retrograde, the principle of alchemy. Its symbol is the circle of spirit being cooked in the crucible. All desires are pure if we cook them back to what they're really for. It's sort of what Carl was referring to as the shadow. The image for Pluto is a performer in a ritual mystery play, and that would be all of us. That would be all of us, in some way, alchemists. In the real tradition that we'll hear more about. The rising sign for us, each moment of time awaits our dedication to align with the most desirable aspects of it, while acknowledging, the funky stuff too. 21 plus Virgo is a royal a royal coat of arms, being connected to a lineage of excellence. So all of us just feel kind of back into the ancestral realm, through all the funkiness and all. Although funky means the positive sweat of the ancestors, to what lineage are we carrying? What lineage is backing us up? And we go, okay. Uh, so um, so we have some recordings that great backstage badger Richard Olson has made audio uh, suitable, right? Because they were recorded in the tomb, the mosque sacred to Ahmad al-Tijani in Fez, Morocco, which is where he died. So we'll start with Omid Safi, number 1.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, friends, here we are at the Mazar, at the shrine of Sheikh Ahmad Tijani, who is probably one of the two most important West African Sufis, along with Sheikh Ahmad Bamba. I'll start out by talking for a second about the connection that exists between West Africa and North America. Mm. Many of you know that amongst the worst crimes in the history of humanity has been the transatlantic slavery, a multi-century long process where 12.5 million West African human beings were stolen, enslaved, carried across the Atlantic, and brought over to the New World. Of those 12.5 million people, human beings, 2.5 million died en route. It is one of the great systematic atrocities. Their bodies were thrown overboard, and the Atlantic Ocean is a graveyard. 10 million of them arrived in the Americas, more or less 10% to North America, 90% to the Caribbean, Central America, Latin America. The West African humans were systematically stripped of their language, their religion, their tribal identity. Families split up. People who would speak the same language sent to different plantations. We have anecdotal evidence of the kinds of people who were subject to this enslavement. The best estimates that we have is that at certain points, something like 15 to 25% of those enslaved people were Muslim. Mm-hmm. So if you do the math, we're talking about 2 million plus, 2 to 3 million West African Muslim human beings stolen and enslaved and brought over to the Americas. That's the main reason why when you get someone like Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, Malcolm X, he sees the Black embrace of Islam not as a conversion, not as a new experience, but actually as a return to the roots, as an embrace of who and what they have always been. Muslims were brought over to the New World long before there was a United States of America. And when the Trumps and the Frumps of the world were still sitting comfortably in their European landscape. Lesser known than that is what the landscape of West Africa, what some people call sub-Saharan Africa, is like and has been like. I'm a little shy to speak on this when we have such a luminous child of that same tree in our midst. But keep 2 points in mind. One, Europeans love to think about a fundamental divide between North Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. You have entirely different groups of people who study them. And North Africa is usually put under Middle East, and sub-Saharan Africa is put under African studies, as if North Africa is not, I don't know, African. For the people of this continent, the Sahara is a sea. It's an ocean. It's just an ocean of sand that you navigate. And there's constant caravans for thousands of years up and down the Sahara. And they've carried goods, they've carried books, they've carried scholars, and they've carried Sufis. And for the last 2 centuries, they carried Sufis from Senegal, from Mauritania, from Nigeria, from all parts of the West African coast to Fez to come here. And they come here because the friend of Allah who's buried behind us, Sheikh Ahmad Tijani, is the founder of one of the largest Sufi orders in the world. The numbers are hard to exactly come by, but in the context of Nigeria, we're told that there might be as many as 30 million Tijanis. And worldwide, the number is sometimes put closer to 100 million. As a brief note, West African Islam has always had a profoundly mystical flavor, in the same way that South Asian Islam, until fairly recently, has always been primarily Sufi. There's no South Asian Islam, there's no Iranian Islam, and there's no Sub-Saharan African, West African Islam without Sufism. In places like Senegal, 90% of people are either Tijani or Muridi. Like, those are your options. Do you have an emblem of Ahmadu Bamba? Or do you go to one of the great Tijani centers? And one of the points that I really want us to take to heart, and for those of us who reside in North America to come to terms with and repent from, is that we.
Well, the recording ends right there with one of the crucial things we have to repent from is that we, and it ends, right? Because this was just recorded by one of our teammates, the 30 people we were all traveling together in the mosque, the shrine of Sheikh Ahmad al-Tijani. But it's a good cliffhanger. One of the things we most want to repent from is that Everybody fill in the blank, right? What do we most want to repent from? I think it leaves it open, that hanging sentence there, repent to rethink, to rethink. There's so much nutrient in this, and so much I certainly didn't know about the enslaved journey of West African Sufis to the Americas long before there was a United States of America. And he says, again, Malcolm X viewed, again, the return to Islam as not a conversion, but as a remembering. And we all, And just to go over what he said, because we want to absorb this, because everything's up for us acknowledging what has been hidden and making it known and being messengers for it, that 12.5 million West Africans were sold into slavery. Of that, 2.5 million died en route, and their bodies were thrown into the Atlantic. We're just repeating what he said. 15 to 25% of those were Sufi Muslims. And that makes 2 million, plus West African Muslims, who arrive in the Americas long before the huge influx of Europeans. Really crucial. And so and then he says, so much, we think of North Africa and South Africa, different scholars, but it's all Africa. And one of the things, as we want to be ever more cultured and more knowledgeable of history and all of these themes and all these nutrient-rich rivers, and I love also in Tahir Shah's book, people in Morocco talk about the river of sand, which is a river of words and stories, always stirring, and available to those who make ourselves available, going, speak to me, or in the words of, the Odyssey, sing to us, O Muse, and through us tell the story, going, ooh. So, and many of these people that he delineates journey to Fez. So I've been dreaming of Fez since I left. It's like just very strong place. It was long ago that I learned the apocryphal story. I have to check it out, but it's the place where tarot cards originated, is the apocryphal story. When the libraries of Alexandria burned, the center of learning and wisdom turns to Fez. That is true. Wise people from all over the world gathered in Fez. 9th century Medina, still right now, like, woo, you can feel it. All the footsteps that have, it's ancient, and we need that kind of ancient pouring up through our feet and into our minds and out there too, the whole realm of culture, and how much people were moving, again, cross-pollinating culture, all of those things. So much going to Fez. So a lot of nutrient-rich material there. So let's go on to Omid Safi number 2. Here we go, Omid Safi number 2.
Refuses, and he says, this is not our way. If you do this, we're just as bad as they are. And he has a mutiny, a full-blown mutiny on his hands. And his own generals, who are Sufis, say to him, swords drawn, but they did this to us. And he responds, if there's one thing you remember from this journey, may it be something like this. He says, they are not our teachers. You have to know who your teachers are. And in resisting evil, you should never become like evil. They are not our teachers. In West Africa, Ahmadu Bamba organizes a nonviolent resistance to the French, and so they exile him. And in many societies, it's the Sufi teachers, again and again and again, who become the face of the resistance against colonialism. So this notion that the Sufis are like Santa Clauses who just withdraw from society and go into their cave. No, these are people, they're social beings. They care about the poor. They care about the needy. If you love the folk, you cannot bear to be silent when you see folks suffering. So how is it that we say things like, up until 150 years ago, in almost every Muslim society, the Sufis were at the center? That there was no Indian Islam without Sufis, no Iranian Islam without Sufis, no Turkish Islam, no Indonesian Islam, no Nigerian and Senegalese Islam without this, no Moroccan Islam. What's happened? The shorthand version of it is this. Some of you have beautiful musical and mathematical minds. So think of like a Venn diagram where Islam is a bigger circle and Sufism is a slightly smaller circle, and almost all of the Sufism circle is inside Islam. But then you do have, of course, some Muslims who are not particularly interested in a Sufi tradition, because Sufism, as we've said, is a matter of taste, though. Not everybody's a lover. It was perhaps the most popular voice, the most important voice, but there's some people who are like, I just want to get to heaven. I'm into this for a transaction. Tell me what the syllabus says. I'll do that and exactly that and not an iota more. Alhamdulillah. And in places like India is always the exception. It's always the exception. You had a tradition of Sufis operating in a context which is majority non-Muslim, accepting Hindu and Buddhist and Jain disciples. So there's a 1,000-year tradition in India of having Sufis who are not necessarily Muslim, or at least conversion to Islam was not a requirement. That was always the exception, but it has also been there for 1,000 years. Everywhere else, the two were superimposed. What you have now is a case where the two superimposed circles of Islam and Sufism are being pulled apart from each other. And I want to talk about how that works. Yesterday on the bus, when we had a series of friends that I got to share the ride with, I forget if it was Angie or somebody else, was like, sometimes you keep using the word Islam and sometimes you keep using the word Sufism, and you use them almost interchangeably. And that's true. Because from that point of view of the superimposed circles, it's very hard to speak about an Islam that doesn't have a mystical side or a mysticism that's not rooted in Islam. But a couple of things have happened to pull these two apart. One, Orientalism. Mm-hmm. So Orientalism is not new. We've had Western scholars getting fascinated by the Sufi tradition for 400 years. Their interest starts primarily with Persian Sufi poetry, Rumi and Hafiz.
Uh-huh. I guess that's the end of that. So just to honor that, I think there's more coming in the next clip. But just to underline, when Omid Safi again recorded at the shrine of Sheikh Ahmad al-Tijani in Fez, Morocco, very powerful. And we've improved the audio quality so you can hear it. But they did this to us, so we should be cruel back. And Omid says, quoting the Sheikh, they are not our teachers, right? So it's a guideline to put on our work table to never adopt the strategy or the cruelty of the oppressor, right? And then he says, the Sufis, social beings, participants caring about the poor, will make a bridge to Pope Leo as we come to the second half. I think we can fit in imperfectly. We can fit in Omid Safi number 3. We'll be a skosh late for our break music, but we're flexible. So here's Omid Safi segment number 3.
I'll take a 30-second tangent to say, if you love Hafiz poetry, what you love is not Hafiz. It's a white guy named Daniel Ladinsky, who for 30 years has been doing forgeries, publishing his own poetry under Hafiz's name. Yeah. It's not a bad translation. He pulls it, in the South we have an expression for where he pulls it out of from. He makes it up. There is zero correlation between what is published as Hafiz poetry and the poetry of Hafiz of Shiraz. Here's the problem that Orientalists have. They love Sufi poetry. They think it's sublime. They think it's magical. They think it's transformative. They think it's beautiful. They think it's erotic. They think it's sensual. But they have already decided, astaghfirullah, that Islam is a dry as desert Semitic religion. They've already decided that Islam and Judaism are the same thing. They can't tell the difference. They're both Semitic religions. And they see Christianity as being far superior to both of them. So how do they reconcile the fact that they love Sufi poetry, but they hate Islam? So, voila, their solution is, astaghfirullah, that Sufism is, you guessed it, un-Islamic. It comes from them. So they have lots of different theories. Sufism is Neoplatonic. Sufism is Greek. And then their most popular theory, which sadly some of my fellow kinsmen love this idea, is that Sufi poetry and Sufism represents the Iranian rebellion against Arab Islam. That we have faked being Muslim for 1400 years. It's a pity that that's being recorded, because I could tell you many things about people who fake things, but of course I cannot repeat them in polite company.
I think only you are recording.
Oh, yeah. So you can tell when somebody is faking, and you don't get to fake for 1400 years. On the other hand, you have another streak of modernist Muslims. Sometimes we call it Salafi Muslims. We're like, give me Quran and the example of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, and nothing else. So if you can't find it in the first 100 years of Islam, we don't need it. So when did Rumi live? After that. When did Ibn Arabi live? After that. When did Sheikh Ahmad Tijani live? After that. And of course, our Wahhabi friends, who are like, we are the only real Muslims. So they're trying to extract an Islam that doesn't have any Sufism in it. More recently, in the last few decades, you also have examples of our New Agey friends. And I use that phrase gently. Some of my best friends are New Agey friends. Whose idea is, yes, Rumi is beautiful, but they have risen above the prison of religion. They represent a universal spirituality. You surely have heard this expression, I'm spiritual, but not religious. That this represents a kind of universal spirituality which belongs in the Bay Area without any problem, with all love towards our friends from the Bay Area, but somehow 13th century Iran or 19th century Morocco is seen as a confining prison. America white consumerist culture is a pure receptacle for universal spirituality. So I am a Kabbalist Yogini Sufi. Influencer. Yes. Mazel tov, you know? So think about what has happened to that overlapping circle of you got Orientalists and New Agers being like, give us Sufism without Islam. And Salafis, modernists, and Wahhabis being like, give us Islam without Sufism. So they're pulling apart this whole intertwined model where to be Muslim was to be mystical was to be grounded in Islam. So the last part that I want to share is about Sheikh Ahmad Tijani himself. So you have a sense of this great friend of Allah. We know a good bit about him. There is a beautiful book on his life, Jawahirul Ma'ani wa Bulugh al-Amani, the jewels of meaning in the attainment of hope, fi fayd, Sidi Abul Abbas al-Tijani. And that word fayd, or phase, if you're from the East, flood. The grace, the barakah of the saint comes at you like a flood.
Right. So these are many stories proffered to everyone going, yes. I do like the takedown of the Hafez imposter translator, General Lodinsky, that Robert Bly was like, critique and standards, useful, right? We're not critique averse. We like that. Remember, criticism, critique is on the way to healing. So we like that. And then much complexity, so offered for rumination. And now we go to our very short break music, which is Soul of Persia. It's again the Lego News Service, and the words are, you can hear them. They're worthy. We'll post it in show notes so you can hear it a little better. But just the Soul of Persia, it's a very short clip, segue between us and us. Here we go. So here's Soul of Persia.
Before the pyramids were built, before the Romans came, people in the mountain land had lit the sacred flame. They called their home Iran, the land of Aryan birth. And Cyrus rose and gave the world his first decree of worth. They gave you algebra, the hospital, the rose. They mapped the stars before the Greeks, they wrote in gilded prose. Rumi spoke of love and God in words that cut like light. Hafez sang the eternal soul through every Persian night. They wore their stories in the silk and laid them on the ground. Their food was poetry, their music was profound. The new year came with saffron rice and candles on the sill. 3,000 years of night rose and they're celebrating still. Foreign boots and clerics laws tried to erase the song. But every conqueror who came left Persian in their tongue. You cannot kill a culture that has lived this long. The soul of Persia burns beneath, it's always been that strong.
Yes, here we are, team. This is the Visionary Activist Show. I'm your weaver of context, Caroline Casey. We're in the midst of many, many stories being proffered on our waxing full moon. That was the so good Iranian Lego News Service on the soul of Persia, reminding us ancient culture, ancient wisdom, and everything kerfuffle, but we're reaching back in our own lineage and by our own affinity, to that which is beautiful and useful now, to be voices for that. So we want to know culture, we want to know stories, we want to know history, we want a strong standard of critique, and when, Omid is critiquing, kind of new agey Sufism kind of thing, that's useful. And then we do honor Coleman Barks' buddy, right, who knew nothing of Islam, right, and very little about Middle Eastern culture or Arab culture, very much. But I was there, or at least I remember being there when Robert Bly tossed Rumi translations to Coleman and said, "These poems are in prison, set them free." And he did. And he was later invited by the Iranian government because he made Rumi accessible in the world. He was invited to Iran and also to Turkey, just celebrated. He was a wonderful, kind, humble person, Coleman Barks, a really great human being. And his translations, have a whimsy and a play and an accessibility to them, which I have not often found. I keep looking. I'm on it. I want to know more and more and more in some of the straight translations from the Farsi. So many stories, complex. Omid's writing a book about all that. So we wonder. So we still have one more Omid Safi clip, and then we will brew it with our guiding story, and then we'll bring in Pope Leo as kind of a Western Sufi, really, in a tradition of caring for the poor, and what he has to say about AI. So here's the clip number 4 from Omid Safi.
Storm, you're being bowled over. That kind of gives you a sense. And the story that we get is that the Prophet himself appears to him and tells him, as he had done with bin Suleiman, Imam Jazuli, to compile a book of his praise. And that's what Sheikh Ahmad Tijani compiles. Written on his grave, and when we're done here, I'll have you go and have a look at it. Those who are inclined, you can offer a prayer or a fatiha. There's a particular word, a litany, that is repeated tens of millions of times every day. Not just by Tijanis, but actually by many, many Muslims. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, al-Fatih lima ughliqa. Our Lord, send peace and blessings upon our Master Muhammad, who opened what was closed. Mm-hmm. What is it that's closed in our life? The heart, difficulties, challenges. Al-Fatih lima ughliqa, wal-Khatim lima sabaqa. And he is the seal of what had come before. We tend to think about seal as enclosing something, but seal in Muslim cultures also has a sense of love. Al-Khatam, that's why the Prophet is called Khatam al-Anbiya, the seal of the prophets. It's when you would write a love letter to someone, that you would roll it up, melt some wax on it, and then you would put your seal on it, so that when the beloved receives it, no other lover's word can be added to it. This has come directly to you. It's preserving much more so than it is finishing. وَالْخَاتِمْ لِمَا صَدَقَ نَاصِرَ الْحَقِّ بِالْحَقِّ. He is the one who is the helper of truth by the truth. And remember, al-Haq, that's the name of God. It's one of the beautiful insights of Islam, is that you're never allowed to call a religion the truth. Religion is not the truth. Religion is the path to the truth. Only Allah is the truth. And many Sufis say the greatest idolatry that you can make is to make religion into the truth. Or in our world, the nation. Al-Hadi ila siratika al-mustaqim, the one who guides us to the straight path. Wa ala alihi haqq qadrihi wa miqdarihi al-adim. And on his family, may this prayer be equal to his immense position and grandeur. So if you just sit here, late morning and during all night, you will hear our Wakanda princes sitting there in their flowing, beautiful African robes, and they're just chanting, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad al-Fatih lima al-Khatim lima sabaqa. And this is the practice. You want to be a Tijani? You better learn this prayer. And across the street, There are shops that sell special prayer beads, beautiful natural wood, that the more you run it through your fingers, the more soft and luminous and fragrant they get. Wood changes. Wood becomes more fragrant through dhikr. How do you think your heart is not going to respond? I'll give you a couple of teachings of Sheikh Ahmad Tijani, and then, Bismillah, we'll head somewhere else. He is, of course, someone who is a student of Islam. He's memorized the Quran by the time he's 7. Normal. He studied philosophy. He's a student of Ibn Rushd, the great Aristotelian commentators. You don't get the Renaissance without Ibn Rushd, Averroes. The Renaissance never studies Aristotle and Plato directly without going through Averroes. Christian sages like St. Thomas Aquinas, they have 500 footnotes to Ibn Rushd. It's a pity, as the Swiss would say, it's a pity that they study Islamic philosophy in its most rationalistic direction, which is Ibn Rushd, rather than through its mystical side, which is Ibn Sina. In the East, philosophy is intertwined with mysticism. Ibn Rushd happened to be what you would recognize as a rationalist, and that ends up being the direction. That's why you get so many French philosophers who are just miserable. Dressed in black from head to toe and put the funny hat on and sit in a cafe drinking black espresso and life is meaningless, So, you can blame it all on Ibn Rushd. And he moves on from studying Quran and the words of the Prophet and philosophy to coming to this love for the Prophet. And he addresses the Prophet as the master of existence. Sayyid al-Kawnayn. He's the one for whom the whole world has been created.
Right. So these profferings from Omid Safi, excuse me, recorded at the shrine of Sheikh Ahmad al-Tijani in Fez, Morocco, which is where Ahmad al-Tijani died. And then we did go make our prayers, and I have a great picture of his tomb that's in the show notes on KPFA, and the recordings will be on, Patreon Visionary Activist Show as well, putting all those there. So yes, and again, it's a rich brew, and I just want to go back briefly to the chart of now, which is the moon has a 135-degree angle to Mercury, which is awareness of danger. We want to be aware of danger. But then the moon has a biquintile to Neptune and Vesta. So there's danger, and then we have irresistible eloquence and the power of dreams and vision and the power of story moving into action and the power of participation. So danger and response, as part of the dynamic. And what is bestowed upon us so generally, well, the moon biquintiles Neptune. So irresistible eloquence. Whoever would like irresistible eloquence on behalf of their message, on behalf of the community and the community of all creation, raise your hand and it will downflow into you going, irresistible eloquence. And my beloved ally Sylvia always says, the quintiles are that, but they're also the capacity to open portals between worlds. So let's say we're doing that, we're welcoming what has been forgotten, but that we need now. The moon squares Pluto. Mars is just past its exact square to Pluto. Many astrologers go, oh, volatile. Well, yeah, predictable things are volatile. Trump, peace plan, oh, I'm bombing you. Well, of course. But we're reminded over and over again about the depth of Persian culture. And also that the word Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz, Hormuz is named after Ahura Mazda, the god of light in Zoroastrianism, and the legend is that in the Straits of Hormuz, the Straits of Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Light, battles the demon of darkness, and well, here we are. So mythological literacy allows us to participate more fully and maybe even change the myth. And I was looking at the eclipse path of August of 2027, thinking of where to go, and it's like it starts in Tangiers, well, in the ocean, and then Tangiers. I'm like, oh, Tangiers, where totality is a little over 2 minutes. But then when it moves east in Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, totality is over 5 minutes, which is, if you love eclipses, I'm an eclipsophile, it's eternity. It's like, whoa. And so part of me is like, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, haven't been there. And then I'm pretty sure that the eclipse path ends pretty close to the Strait of Hormuz, or close enough for mythological work, going. So participatory, it's not just descriptive. What do we want to be eclipsed, right? And to gather along the way, the wisdom of, Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia and Libya, underneath all of the modern news reduction into, foolish polarity, into the depth, the wisdom that there, and the commerce of ancient cultures to and fro. And we welcome that. We want that. So we're going to go to Mathew Remsky on Pope Leo's recent talk on AI, and we'll we'll fit in as much of Pope Leo as we can. So here's Mathew Remsky, who's a pretty, again, nobody's perfect. We're all more than one story. So here's Mathew Remsky, part of our narrative guide. Here we go.
There's going to be a lot to say about Leo's extraordinary letter on AI, but as you read through it, which is worth doing for anyone of any persuasion, in my opinion, I just want to highlight some of his references to liberation theology. Now, in the document, these references are on the down low in that Catholic way for the last century has attempted to avoid direct confrontation with capital, in part out of its own class interests, and in part out of the elegant magical thinking that wants to believe that the love of Jesus can overcome capital. But still, it's liberation theology that carries the major political weight of his argument. Now, some have already pointed out that Leo is trolling Peter Thiel by citing Tolkien on resisting evil. He also gives a full materialist and moral framework for AI, saying that all technologies and classification systems have politics and that designs carry the values of their owners. But here are some other key concepts that you can look out for. The preferential option for the poor, which is liberation theology's main contribution to Catholic social doctrine coming out of the 1960s. It's given equal importance alongside notions of human dignity, the universal destination of goods, redistribution, care for the planet, and peace. It basically means that in all deliberations, people with influence should put the lives of the poor first. Pretty simple. He also pings the notion of structural sin, that injustice arises not only from individual moral failure, but from, quote, structures, mechanisms, and economic and cultural systems that produce inequality almost automatically. And then he frames this automatic quality in terms of the algorithm. He pings Francis's eco-politics by saying the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor cannot be separated, which feeds into the notion of the whole person, which is considered as the child of both spirituality and political economy. And what about Jesus on the cross? He points to the key liberation theology reading that the Savior tortured and murdered by the ice of Rome is an act of identification with the oppressed. And then his mom gets a few paragraphs as she predicts this alliance in the Magnificat, which is her song about viewing history from below. There's also a nod to dependency theory as he points to the layers of colonialism embedded in AI tech, where the capture of human labor is mirrored by the extraction of rare earth. And he even says that the old Catholic just war theory is outdated in the era of autonomous weapons. So I'll be looking at some of these things in the conspirituality episode we'll do on this next week. And this Saturday, I've got a brief episode out about the issues he's addressing, the conspiracy to cannibalize labor, resources, and data in an acceleration of enshittification. Last thing I'll say for now is that the overwhelming consequences of AI as tech and infrastructure and human degradation often seem to me larger than any hyperobject I've pondered. And so it seems that a response that foregrounds the universal, even the mystical, is appropriate in terms of scale, even if and because it admits that it doesn't yet have answers.
Right. All right, we're all hanging together here on the Visionary Activist Show with many contributing voices. Again, the world is alive with stories. No one story, no one is one story. Many stories, but the segue also from the great Sufi Sheikh Ahmad al-Tijani and Omid Safi's really useful exposition of West African Sufism and the relationship of slavery bringing enslaved Sufis to the Americas far before far before Europeans arrived. All of this is rich, and there's one other recording of Omid Safi that I hope to extract, really useful. The two, to me, most crucial talks he gave on our 2-week journey in Morocco, because one was on the madrasa, and I'll let him mostly speak for that when I wrestle the recording from him. But the madrasas, deep learning, and we were at a madrasa, again, these powerful, 14th century universities, but going way back. And he says the madrasas, the universities of learning in the Middle East, Islamic, many started by women, predate Cambridge and Oxford by 100 to 200 years, right? And he goes into what was studied in the madrasas, like all of pre-Socratic philosophy and all of alchemy and astronomy. They don't say astrology, but astronomy, astrology, the Persian sky gazers, and on and on and on. And I go, oh, that's real learning, and may it quicken in all of us just a desire to know more. Everything wants us to know more, to follow our curiosity, going, I want to know more about this. I want to know more about this. And then what Mathew Remsky says about Pope Leo, and his addressing and his kind of trolling Peter Thiel by quoting Gandalf. That's great. That's really great. And let's remember as we head into just a little bit of Pope Leo's actual talk on AI, as part of our brewing here together, our council. Just let's remember another great guiding voice, Sir Herbert Reed, wonderful British anarchist, who said long ago, only those serving an apprenticeship to nature can be trusted with technology. It's in the stars. It's in our hearts. It's like, let's just put that down there as an impossible, desirable, necessary thing, a vetting standard. Absolutely. And just in the chart of now, the alchemy of now, and the power of stories, and that stories are nutrient, and each one of us is a storyteller. And by making our dedication, the pattern in the chart is Saturn is exactly squaring Venus. So it says the cure to our loneliness, which is available, is deeper dedication. And the image for Saturn is wild geese, which reminds us of Mary Oliver's great sort of rock star famous poem, Wild Geese. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to crawl on your knees for 100 miles. You want to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, and I will tell you about mine. Meanwhile, the sound of the wild geese, harsh and exciting, announcing your place over and over in the family of creation. I apologize for the misquote, Mary, but that's the gist of the thing, and that's here before us. And we might say, as we head into just a little bit of Pope Leo, we'll probably fade out before whatever. I'll post it in show notes. That AI, many things, right? But it has no Venus. It has no Venus, no intimacy. It's got the toxic mimic of Venus. For anybody who's had their language turned into AI, it's like, it's all smooth and kind of marketable, but no Venus intimacy. And my inner coyote its hackles go up when I read things that have been written by AI. I can tell. It's like, and in the spirit of Stella Coyote, I'm like, yeah. And again, it's kind of everywhere. These are deep things, but let's hear a bit of Pope Leo addressing AI. Here we go.
Dear brothers and sisters, I want to thank all of you for being here today, for your interest. I sincerely thank those who have organized this meeting today, and especially those who have shared their competence and experience in the different reflections that we have listened to. In a special way, I'd like to thank Mr. Ola for accepting our invitation. In turn, in the name of the Church, I accept your invitation to walk together, to listen and to speak, and together to find the way for humanity in this time of artificial intelligence. What a great sign of hope it is that with our differences, we can listen to one another. This interchange clearly bespeaks the gravity of the moment, as well as confidence that together we can discern the major questions of our time, and so the future of humanity. At key moments in history, the Church is called to decipher the new things in the light of the gospel and the dignity of the human being. 135 years ago, my venerable predecessor, Leo XIII, observed the situation of factory workers, their families uprooted, and new forms of poverty generated by rapid industrial transformation. He understood that the Church could not remain distant. Within an epochal turning point menacing human dignity, the encyclical Rerum Novarum spoke its evangelical and social word about new things underway. Today, we find ourselves facing a transformation of similar magnitude, with perhaps even greater consequences. Artificial intelligence already touches many areas of our lives and affects decisions that shape human coexistence. It is also dramatically changing how war is waged. Like the earlier Leo, I feel entrusted to look upon another huge transformation with eyes of faith, with lucidity of reason, with openness to mystery, and with cries of the poor and the earth resounding in my heart. Magnifica Humanitas was born from listening, like Leo XIII did. I've listened to scientists and engineers who work with sincere enthusiasm on technologies capable of alleviating immense suffering, to political leaders and public officials who have perseveringly sought just rules, to parents and teachers who are deeply concerned for the future of younger generations. Other very troubling voices have also
We're going to fade out now on the worthy offering of Pope Leo. I will post it in show notes, Patreon Visionary Activist Show. The whole thing is really great. But in this rich brew, finding our own lineage, finding that for which we want to be a messenger, and the reuniting of Western culture and African and Middle Eastern and everything, we need it all together, united, as the Grail legend teaches. Percival can only attain the Grail when he finds his black Islamic stepbrother. So here we go. Thank you so much. Thank you always to Kirsten Thomas. I'm Caroline Casey. We will reconvene next week. Thank you, team.
Thank you. Mil gracias. The fund drive is over. We didn't quite hit our goal, but KPFA is still here because you refuse to let independent media disappear quietly. To everyone who donated, listened, or simply cared, thank you. These are hard times. That's exactly when we need fearless radio. Unbought, unbossed, speaking truth to power while late night gets canceled and the corporate airwaves fall silent. It's not too late. Thank you gifts remain available through Sunday, May 31st at kpfa.org.
You are listening to 94.1 KPFA, 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno. Online everywhere at kpfa.org.